is Monday, the 18th of June, 2018, and we have Patricia, our Patricia.
Hello.
We have a few more people who will be adding themselves, and we have special guest permission to exist. So hello.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on our panel. A name like that, who was that for? Everybody, or because obviously your subject on your channel is narcissism.
Yes.
And is that title for the person who is ill or the person who's being, the other one, the other one? Was it for everyone?
It's really for the latter, the person who has been so affected, so beat down, so exhausted by narcissistic interactions. The title is really meant to be a reminder that you have permission to exist. You don't need it from them. You don't need it from anyone else. You have it. And it's just that reminder that we have every right to be here, every right to exist, and every right to exist in a way that makes you happy and not harmful to others, obviously. But you have a right to be who you are, to think what you think. And oftentimes narcissists try to take that right away. So it's really that reminder to that latter half that you have the permission to exist. You have the right to be here.
So Patricia was asking you a question just before we came on air, because she said, obviously looking at her channel, do you talk about much else? And you said no. So do you want to say the reason why you've stuck on that subject?
Sure. I really believe that narcissism is one of those hidden disorders. We hear it and people automatically think, oh, a narcissist is someone who spent too much time in the mirror, or they take too many selfies, and they're just self-absorbed people and they just think life is all about them. And while that's very true, that tends to be just the tip of the iceberg. And narcissism actually has roots that go far deeper, far more detrimental than most people realize. And so part of what I'm trying to do is uncover those roots. I'm trying to kind of destroy that definition of, oh, it's just a person who takes too many selfies and they're really absorbed in their looks. I'm trying to kind of do away with that definition altogether and really bring to the forefront what narcissism really is, what it does, and the impact that it has on our communities. Eventually, I'll get into some other topics, like I really want to start focusing on the survivors, giving them some encouragement, letting them know that they're still here in spite of great obstacles, and just some different life tips to kind of help them manage their lives and maybe even get away from a narcissist. But what I found is that almost all social ills, almost everything we complain about as a global society kind of roots back to narcissism. Once you fully start to understand what it is, everything, all roads lead to narcissism. And that's a video I should have done months ago. And it's rolling around in my head and I just haven't put it out there yet. So eventually other topics, yes, but for now, the primary focus is raising awareness about this disorder.
Is this something that runs in with how they've made society nowadays? What I mean is, like, there is this thing called subversion, which is to break up families, is to make you feel useless, awful. There is all that going on. Or is this an illness?
I really think that what we're seeing is narcissism had a beginning point. Now, where to point the finger to that origin is it can be difficult. Other people might say it's pretty easy. I think it's slightly difficult, but what has happened is it has snowballed to such an extent that it has now branched out and destroyed the family. And once you destroy the family, from there you branch out and destroy the individual. And I don't know that that was narcissism's original intent, the individuals who were initially affected by it, but it is the end result. So one thing that I often say on my channel is that narcissism is very similar to cancer. So cancer all by itself, the cancer cell by itself is not a problem. And oftentimes the body is able to deal with that 1 or 2 cancer cells. The problem with cancer is that it keeps replicating and it doesn't know when to stop. And it doesn't realize that it's destroying the very host body that it's a part of because it doesn't care. Because its sole focus, cancer's sole focus, is to dominate, control, take over, and have the most, be the winner. So in Cancer's desire to be the winner over all the other cells, it not only destroys the other cells nearby it, it eventually destroys the whole organism. And I think that's what's happening. We're now witnessing the destruction of the organism itself.
Wow.
I could go really deep on that, but
can I just say that Roxanne has joined us. Hi, Roxanne.
Hi, Roxanne. Uh-oh, I think she's muted.
Sorry, I'm just sorting my mic out. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. Sorry about the headphones. It just comes through a bit echoey if I don't use it. But yeah,
That's
really.
Okay. With permission to exist.
Thank you, my darling. Nice to meet you, sweetheart.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Karen, for allowing me to be here. I'm really, really pleased to be a part of this. So my ears are pinned back and I'm well and truthfully listening.
Awesome.
Well, I just wanted to add to that then. What you've just said, permission to exist, these people lie, don't they? And they believe their lies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not to cut you off, sorry, I want to make sure you finish your question.
Yeah, that's it. That's just it. That they lie and then they believe their lies.
Absolutely. And then what happens, in my opinion, is, and I probably should state for the record, I'm by no means a medical professional, mental health counselor or therapist, anything like that. I just want to make sure your listeners know I'm just a person who's done a lot of reading, a lot of research. You could call me a social researcher probably, but I just want to make sure everyone knows that. So I will say, in my opinion, a lot, because I just want to make sure everyone knows that it's not something I pulled out of a textbook, if that makes sense. But yes, they create a lie, and then they have to protect that lie. So in the protection of that lie, there's a whole host of other lies, schemes, manipulations, different things that are done to protect the original lie, until eventually that original lie becomes truth. And I put truth in quotation marks. And then now you're protecting a truth that was never true to begin with. So it's almost like narcissists have built up the ultimate defense mechanism, one that works so well that even they believe their lies.
Yeah, I just thought about that. It may not be that they believe it, but they've got to protect it.
Absolutely, at all costs, because if it's ever revealed that the thing they were protecting was a lie, it's almost like they've been found out. Then it's almost like the narcissist world collapses. So and a lot of people cannot handle that, but in particular, narcissists cannot handle themselves being found out. So they spend their entire lives in defense of what they're hiding behind the curtain, basically. You're so welcome. That's what I do it for. And I love hearing that, because it lets me know that we're freeing people out here. Like, this message, this information is freeing people. So thank you so much for telling me that. I'm so happy.
Just to explain to Patricia, we're on with permission to exist. Are Patricia and Roxanne Glenn so far, and one more person I think is going to join. But I was like, when I was looking at your channel the other day and I was watching the Prince Rupert's drop, I just like, wow, I wondered if you would explain that, because that just explains it all, doesn't it, really?
Absolutely. It really does. And I really love it when examples like that come around, because it really helps to illustrate what I'm talking about. And I love to use examples and analogies on my channel. It's one of my favorite ways to present this information. But essentially, a Prince Rupert's drop is something that occurs. So when they're melting glass for different reasons, if you take some of that molten glass and you drop it into cool water, it forms a structure that looks kind of like a tadpole. So it has a really round head and kind of a slender body that kind of finishes out in a tail, what they call it. What's so peculiar about these structures is that they can withstand great force to their head, that rounded part. Force is as great as a bullet. If you can get it, hang it up correctly or whatever, and shoot it point blank, it will not shatter. The bullet will not shatter this thing. But if you so much as snip the tail, or sometimes just touching the tail can cause the whole thing to shatter into a million little pieces, and shatter violently also. That's the other thing about it. So when folks are handling these drops, they have to be very careful, because if they accidentally break the tail, they could get cut up by all of these little pieces of glass that have exploded out from this thing. And it makes me laugh. I have a very dry sense of humor. So things like that, it's funny to me, because it's like, really? You can take a bullet, a point blank range bullet to the face, but if someone messes with your tail, oh, you shatter into a million little pieces. And I'm like, if that's not a narcissist, I don't know what else is. And what makes narcissists, to me, what makes the parallel is that they seem to be able to take so much, head on. Oftentimes they're in positions of great power, and they're able to handle scandals and, insults and all kinds of stuff. But if you tiptoe around to that tail is usually whatever it is they're trying to hide, whatever truth they're trying to keep from getting out is what I consider the tail to be. And if you so much breathe on it, even in the slightest way, you're going to see a complete narcissistic meltdown. They're like landmines in a way. And I would consider those Prince Rupert's drops landmines, because while some people might say, oh, they're not fragile at all, they're actually very strong. Well, you're not that strong if your tail gets touched and you shatter into a million little pieces. So it's the same with the narcissist. And some people, unfortunately, have dealt with narcissists for so long that they know what those tail pieces are, and they just step around them because they don't want to see the narcissistic meltdown. They don't want to experience it. They don't want to get cut up with all those pieces of glass by tripping on that tail. But the thing about narcissists is, especially if you don't know them that well, sometimes you can trip over that tail on accident. And then here comes your narcissistic meltdown.
I really like what you said. And I've heard that narcissists come from a place of a shame-based, they're a shame-based being that occurred somehow different for each narcissist.
I was just
at a young age
myself, because this world we're in now has been built very much on our egos, right? But Absolutely. What it is all this thing is covering up their shame base. They're shamed, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think here, because I get a lot of different comments on the channel, lots of different perspectives. And one perspective that pops up often is people who are kind of sort of in defense of the narcissist because of their history. Oftentimes narcissists have gone through great trauma in their childhood, different things like that. And my answer is always the same. And it probably comes off as cold to some people, but it's really not meant to be cold. And my answer essentially is, just because someone is sick doesn't make them any less dangerous. So just because someone has been traumatized in their youth, had a really bad break or a series of really bad breaks, terrible parents, terrible upbringing, just because all of those things are true, these particular people chose a dangerous and a very destructive way to deal with it. So just because they may have been abused, traumatized in their childhood, doesn't give them the right to then turn around and abuse you and traumatize you. It really doesn't give them that right. And narcissists kind of sit on that trauma as a right. Like, well, as a kid, I was abandoned, so now I'm going to engage in abandoning type behaviors towards you because I was abandoned. And oftentimes there's an awareness there. So that's the other part of it. It's like, how can you be aware, that you're harming someone else, but you excuse it based on your past? So I sum all that up and I make it a summary statement by saying, just because they're sick doesn't make them any less dangerous at all. They're still dangerous people until they find a way to correct that disorder. And I have my own opinions on whether or not it can be corrected. But until they get the help that they need, and until they're able to develop that empathy that we all need to survive with each other, they're still dangerous. So it's like, I'm so sorry for the trauma, but there's a lot of people who go through that same trauma and choose not to be wicked, dangerous people. It's my personal opinion that they are 100% aware of who they are and what they do. It's my opinion that they are aware of the darkness And to some degree, they are aware of the damage that it inflicts. And they either don't care or they don't know how to fix it. And I give them those two options because I've read a lot of comments and interacted with a lot of people who told me that their significant other will say, yes, I know I do this and I don't know why I do it. I don't know who this person is. Sometimes they'll tell them, you should run away from me. You should get away from me. You really should. Like they're trying to warn this person that there's this entity, there's this thing with me that I can't control and it's going to ultimately hurt you and you should get away from me. So some of them know. I do think the most dangerous type of narcissist is the narcissist who doesn't even realize what they're doing, who totally lacks awareness. But in my opinion, that's rare. It's either rare or the disorder is much deeper than even I give it credit for. But I just don't see how you can get so much feedback into your adult years that when you do this, you make me feel this, or when you do this, this happens.
Is that because they like power?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of narcissists, they want to win at all costs. So them being nice to you, to them is like a loss. When they're kind to you or when they're gentle with you or tender with you, to them, they interpret that as some kind of loss. And so it makes them very difficult to live with, work with, and be around. But I do think that they know. I really do.
I think so too. I definitely do. Here's a question of in narcissist victims that draws narcissists to us that we can strengthen so it never happens again.
Sure, absolutely. I definitely think so. I think it's two things. One, I'll start with what I think is the easier one, which is, excuse me, it's a gross, and I think I'm going to butcher this word. It's a gross naivete. I think that's how you say it. I think it's naivete, but it's a gross state of being naive. I'll put it that way. And it comes from a bubble that was essentially created.
Just to explain to Bling Bling, we're on the panel with Roxanne Glenn, our Patricia Steer, and Permission to Exist. And we're talking about narcissism today.
Yes. Hi there. What a great topic.
Yeah.
Boy.
Well,
we all know a
few.
few.
Haven't we, ladies?
Oh, yeah. We have.
We sure have.
Can
I just say, is it a bit like when you wake up, you've got to have learned who you are. And then when you get there, you get to a higher consciousness where we don't want to treat each other like that anymore. Because if you know who you are and what life's like, these people don't care.
They don't care at all. They have such a disregard. Someone put it really great the other day, and I meant to save the article, but basically what they were saying is they just don't play by the rules of humanity. And I've alluded to this in other videos before, where I was basically saying that narcissists, human beings, we put a formula to everything else. We know how to cook. We follow a recipe. We know how cars work. We've got math and different calculations. So we have all these other systems in place for life. But when it comes to human beings, it's almost like we take our hands off and go, well, whatever happens, happens. It's just organic, as if human beings don't have a set of rules that make humans function well. And it's almost like some of those rules are inborn. A few have to be taught as you get older. But for the most part, you kind of know when you're doing something right and something wrong. Narcissists have completely disregarded all the rules as it pertains to how to treat a human being, how to handle another human life. It's like they don't care, or if they do care, they just feel like their situation matters more, their needs matter more. They come first, and it just doesn't work. And it proves itself as not working over and over and over again, but no amount of proof can make a narcissist change course. And to me, that's part of what makes them so dangerous, is that you cannot, and I just did a video recently called Words Don't Work with narcissists. There is no combination of words, a flip chart. You can't do a PowerPoint presentation, get out a whiteboard marker and a whiteboard. You can't whiteboard it for them. There's nothing you can do to get through to them, to show them what you're doing is not only affecting your life negatively, it's affecting your life and everybody else's. There's nothing you can say or do. And that, to me, that's what makes them so dangerous and what really drains the life out of the people who work with them and deal with them.
Can I ask you something? Is this something that actually really happens when these people are small? Because I myself got quite into psychology. And, you know, by the age of 3, a child has worked out what's going to happen in its life and usually lives its life just like that 3-year-old. And I mean, I read this book called I'm Okay, You're Okay. But someone who's not feeling okay, which is this process of this child, they go, I'm not okay, but you're okay. Or I'm not okay, you're not okay. I'm okay, but you're not okay. But it should be I'm okay, you're okay. So they're always living in one of those stances. Either they're okay or you're not okay, or that no one's okay. So how can those people go forward if they're never going to believe anything anybody else says in the first place? Because they were 3 years old and that's how they run their life now.
You know, I feel like one of the most amazing things about them is that they actually do live to be as old as they do sometimes. I don't know how they've been able to function up until this point, playing by their particular rule system.
I'm surprised no one kills them. They're so horrible.
No, seriously, like it's a wonder that they make it to the ages that they do, because they really do put themselves in harm's way with the way they treat other people. And then just the way they live their lives is almost like narcissists have to take things to the extreme in order for any type of change to take place. And that change is usually not initiated by them. It's usually initiated by the law or by the rules that govern nature. So, you know, eventually if they keep speeding at 100 miles per hour drunk, they might make it home a few times doing that. But if they just keep it up, eventually they're going to meet that tree or that pole. So it's almost like life itself has to stop them, or the law stops them. So the prisons are filled to the brim with narcissists, people who just absolutely refuse to play by the rules. And I'm not saying that all the rules that are laid out for citizens are good ones. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but some of the rules are helpful. You know, some rules I think are actually pretty useful.
Do you think a lot of these people are dominators as well?
I think they are. But I do go back and forth with this, because I've also found that a lot of narcissists, in all of their insanity, actually have really low self-esteem. Really low self-esteem.
They're always putting their narcissism out on everyone else. They're not internalizing it and keeping it there, are they really? They're having to make sure that everybody else knows, but they're always blaming everybody else for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything they do is triggered or, you know, generated by someone else. Reality TV shows, or, you know, something that happened on Instagram. They don't have any other content. Oh, absolutely.
And
the programming, you said?
Yeah, it's all programming, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's worked so well that it's insane how well that it's worked. Because so many of these children are in despair. They've done studies to show that our preteens and our young adults are deeply depressed. They don't have a lot of hope for the future. And that's just sad, because I remember having hope for the future at a young age. And it's almost like they can see everything now, and what they see they don't like, and they're in deep despair.
Can I say that in a way, I think that things have got worse, and I agree with you on that. But as a society, we've gone through a lot of touching children for many, many, many years. That's not nice, is it?
When you say touching, what do you mean?
Well, it's actually touching children. You know, right. A lot of families have this going on, or people are doing it. So we've come from a society that's been doing that to the children. So that's not very nice either, is it?
It's not. And it's our society is hypersexualized also. And kids are getting exposed to things that they shouldn't see or shouldn't know at very young ages, and things that they can go find on their own now. Before, you at least had to sneak into your parents' closet to see those kinds of things. But now all they need is just free access to the internet, and they can see anything. But there's a lot of abuse going on in households. But narcissism holds people in check. So if the abuser is a narcissist, what they're going to instill in that child is what goes on in this house stays in this house. It's nobody else's business what goes on in this house. You see? You know,
So being a narcissist then is something that is with you from a child then. It's not something you go, oh, 18, ding, I'm a narcissist. It really, you've got traits and things from a child all the way through. People just don't notice it.
I think that's possible. However, I've said this on a video before. I think something happens around the age of 19. I don't know what it is, but something
triggers it, you mean? It's sitting there subconsciously and then it gets triggered.
Correct. Because I've seen so many people flip at that age. It's to me, it's worthy of further study. I've seen a female friend of mine at age 19. It's like her narcissism flipped on. My college ex, who I reference quite often because he was a really heavy contributor to all of this. I saw his switch flip on at 19. So when he and I met, we were both 18. We dated for about a year. He turned 19, and then it's like a completely different person replaced him. Completely different. I have a couple theories on that. One of those theories is when we're children and we're still living with our parents, everyone's on the same playing field. No one has a job. No one has a car. No one has their own place. No one has a career. We're all just kids living off our parents, basically. Excuse me. But what happens once we turn 18, and then I guess 19 is when it really cements, we start to choose our life paths. And those of us who have those seeds of narcissism that never got watered until then, it's almost like they recognize, uh-oh, the playing field is changing now. He or she is getting ready to major in blank, or he or she just got a job doing XYZ. You know, uh-oh, their future looks bright. And it's almost like it was fine as long as we were all on the same level. But as soon as the level differentiation started to show up, is almost like when the narcissism kicks on. So in other words, it's like they had nothing to compete with up until that point. Nothing, because what can you compete with when your parents, everyone's parents are pretty much on the same level, same class, basically. There's nothing to compete with yet, because everything that you are is because of your parents up until that point, for the most part. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So I do think it's there. And again, I kind of waffle on, do we all have those seeds and they just have to be activated, or are some of us just born with it and others are not? But at any rate, I have seen it come on at age 19. I don't know what it is about 19, but 19 does it.
I've got the book up there. Basically, inside you, you've got a child, a parent, and an adult. And the book says, well, when someone knocks on the door of life, who's going to open it? Your child, your parent, or your adult? Well, the first two are what's happened to you and how you treat yourself. So there could be the kid with the broken cookie. So there's the feeling, and there's also mannerisms, you know, stamping feet, crying, whatever it is. And then the parent, you know, scolding, the words they use, and that's how you treat yourself. But ultimately, we should be adults. The adult thinks a bit. Should I? Will I? Won't I? The other two react, and the adult in you thinks. And that's not happening with people, because all they're doing, if they don't even realize it, is they're just reliving what's happened to them. Probably 90% of it, 99 is when they were a child. And they don't realize it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like so many of us, I think everyone in the world needs therapy, to be honest with you, to uncover those types of patterns that you're talking about right there, those child-based patterns and that childlike thinking that tends to drive us, so we can correct it and move into our adult space. But you're absolutely...
A lot of things happen like with your parents, even if you don't, because everybody will go, what was your childhood like? And everybody will go, oh, it was really nice. It's only maybe when you think about it later on and look at yourself, you think it wasn't very nice at all. And, you know, you cover things up, and then I think your child deals with things better than your adult, actually. It's the adult who can't cope with it.
Absolutely. And you bring up a very good point, which is, I think a lot of people think that if I wasn't abused, physically or sexually or otherwise as a child, then I had a good childhood. And that is not true. That is not necessarily true. There's a lot of people walking around with deep mental issues from parents who never hit them, never spanked them. They weren't abused or exposed to any kind of abuse, but their parents may or may not have been narcissists, and it has impacted them for the rest of their lives, and they don't realize it. I think we have to.
I just went off track myself and I couldn't remember it, but you know, very often if your parents aren't treated very nice, parents don't realize it. They are still the main attention. I know they have to be if you're married, but then there's the children. But they then take out on their children what's been taken away from them. So this is what I'm saying. You might have had better community in a way, but like, really? I mean, look at what we're coming from. Look what's come through us from our parents and society, and it's really bad. It's a generational thing, which we're hoping to sort of now waking up is to hopefully end this and make people realize, think differently about themselves for a start.
Absolutely. I think, I have so many opinions on this, but I try not to give them because I'm not a parent myself. So I have so many opinions on parenthood and family and all that stuff, but I just keep them to myself. But one of those is, you know, a lot of people didn't realize that their parents were actually irresponsible. And you might say, well, how? Well, I think a lot of times couples get married and they assume that because they're married, they can do whatever they want in terms of having as many children as they want. And then what happens is math kicks in, mathematics, and unless mom and dad both have great jobs or one or the other has a really great job, mathematically it becomes almost impossible to support that family to fruition. So then that starts to kick back in the form of, well, I'm not giving you that because I didn't have that growing up and you don't need that either. When the real truth is, I'm not giving you that because we can't afford it because we have too many of you guys. But it's okay. Society stamps it as okay because they're married. They did it in the sanctity of marriage. So therefore, any decisions they make for the family are okay because they're a married family. And I think that could be the beginning of the root of the problem. Or here's another way to look at it. A family, totally disregards mathematics, and then it occurs to them that they're going to need more money to survive. So one parent or the other or both take on positions and roles that will bring in that extra cash, but it takes them away from the family. So you now have enough money to survive, but you, the parent, are no longer there to guide that child. And as a result, the children end up without guidance. They end up without that foundation, that structure. I thought back to when I was a child, 12, 13, like my friends and I were left alone all the time. And I really sat and thought through it. And I'm like, because I look at the parents today, I look at Instagram, and I'm like, they are so involved in their kids' lives, which I think is great. I think that's an excellent thing. It made me reflect on the fact that my parents were always off working, always. My friends' parents were always off working. Everyone's parents were working. So we essentially raised ourselves. And that has turned out to be disastrous, that approach, because I don't think it was just myself and my friends. I really think it happened nationwide, where it suddenly became so expensive to live that the only way to raise these kids was to take on extra hours, take on new responsibilities, which are great for your career, but your kids suffer. So I'll stop there before I dig my hole too deep.
I like this open exchange of opinions that we're having, because not all of our opinions are in agreement, and yet they're all valid. And hey, we're only doing this on YouTube because we want everybody to participate and have their own opinions. So that makes it great.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you think a narcissist can ever be cured?
So yes and no. There's a term I use on my channel called narcissistic fence walkers. And for those unfamiliar, to me, a narcissistic fence walker is someone who operates out of a narcissistic position. They do a lot of narcissistic things, But the first time that they're ever exposed to the reality of what they're doing, or they ever come to learn the impact of their actions, they change. They change. They're humiliated by it. They're deeply apologetic. They go into like a reflective mode, and they kind of reflect on their whole life and realize the pain that they've caused. And sometimes they'll even try to make atonement for it. Not every time, but a lot of times they'll try to atone. And to me, that's someone who just, their mind was on one mode and was never challenged by anything, because maybe they were surrounded by narcissists. So then their thinking never got challenged. The first time it was challenged and proven that what you're doing is hurtful, they change. So I call those narcissistic fence walkers. However, I think the people who are really rooted in narcissism, what I call the true narcissists, unfortunately, and then this is just my non-medical opinion, in my opinion, there's no hope for them. They can't be changed. They go down with the ship, basically. So they hold fast to their method. They hold fast to their approach, to the point where it destroys them, to the point where it destroys their family. And if they have any influence whatsoever, political or otherwise, it destroys those people under their influence as well, because they just cannot be told or convinced that what they're doing is not right. It's not the right thing. And, you know, even unto death, they don't take that as proof. They'll have another excuse for that. So one way that this comes out is health related. So if you know a narcissist who's maybe suffering with health problems, some problems we can't avoid, we can't prevent. Some things we're born with. That's not what I mean. What I mean are health problems that were brought on by the person and can also be cured by the same person. The doctor will tell them, you need to stop doing this and start doing that. You have to stop doing this and start doing that. And that narcissist will smile on the doctor's face and say, yes, doctor. Okay, doctor, you're right. I'm going to change. And then they get home and they go right back to the exact same thing that got them in that position. And what makes it even more narcissistic is if they have children or family members, the expectation is that you care for me in my ill health, even though my ill health is of my own doing, and I refuse to change what's causing it. I refuse to live differently. So I give that example to say that true narcissists, there's no getting through. You can't break through that skull. And that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Well, basically, we have to stay away from them then.
Absolutely. Because it's like every time you let them back in, they make you regret being nice to them. That's been my experience anyway.
They will use anything you tell them when you first meet them at all, anything, regardless of what it is. A horrible incident from your childhood, how you might really feel about I'm making this up, by the way, about your best girlfriend or whatever. And then later in the discard / humiliation smear campaign, use that against you. These are not nice people. And I fully believe the only way they'll straighten out is when they're in the grave.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For those of you who have any inclinations towards the spiritual or the religious, there's a concept called the reprobate mind. And essentially what the reprobate mind is a mind that has basically been sealed off by God. So in other words, he sealed it off and said, there's no hope for this one. But again, that's, going into the religious a little bit, but they are the reprobate minds. They are those minds who have been capped, sealed, and kind of left to their own devices. And oftentimes it is the grave that ultimately has to stop them. You'll see children pleading with certain parents. I think this happens a lot when kids try to take the keys from a narcissistic parent who maybe caused 4 or 5 different accidents, totaled a couple different cars as a result of their, health or whatever. And they just refuse to give those keys up, won't give them up, to their own detriment and to the detriment of everyone else around them. It's just another example. But it's like, it's the sad to me.
They're trying to be in control of everything, but they're not in control of themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the best ways to, anything that they can control, they try to. And then if they can't do it directly, they'll find an indirect way to control. Don't question my authority, right? So then you have generations of people who either came from the military might that set up a society, then it came through the schools, more command and control. But what happened, in my opinion, is as we started to revolutionize and as we started to implement more technology and more information was being shared, more books printed, more reading, people started to slowly wake up to the fact that, okay, this worked kind of to set the society up, but it's not going to be what it takes to keep society going. So to answer your question, I do think generationally it has been instilled. And I think what we're seeing now is the breakdown of that particular programming, which is you have to have an authority, and then you have to have the people who listen to that authority, and that you're not supposed to question authority because authority is always right. And authority is always going to do what's best for society at large. I think people are learning that our approach up to this point, yeah, it's gotten us this far. It's not going to take us to the next level. So I think it's culturally ingrained. And I also do think it's also an illness, because if you think about it, what would ever make it okay to invade another country and just kill off all the people because you want it, because you want to live there and you don't want them to live there anymore? You know what I mean? And we read about it in the history books and we're like, oh, well, that was just the blah, blah, blah war, or that was just the invasion of blah, blah, blah. And then we don't really stop to consider what that meant. Like, usually they weren't invading for protection. They were usually invading for resources. And what would ever make that okay? That has to be the illness piece. The fact that the way human beings have treated each other over the centuries, that has to be some sort of psychological and mental illness. It has to be. Do you see what I mean? Where I'm getting at with that?
We're higher frequency beings. That's where we should be, more sort of spiritual, sort of, I don't know. And what we're talking about is none of that.
Correct. Oh, you're so correct. We're now finally coming to that place of a higher frequency. We're finally taking a step back and looking at what we've done. And the problem is, oftentimes people will argue, well, we put airplanes in the sky. We have skyscrapers and the internet and technology. And the only reason you guys are able to have this hangout right now is because some computer programmer has made this possible. So in many ways, there's this belief that we've achieved so much, but my argument is always, you build with the left hand and then you destroy with the right hand, or vice versa. You build with the right hand, destroy with the left. So how great is your society when your society still has not figured out how to stop killing each other? Your society is not that great. It's not. If there's still people on the street starving to death and homeless or whatever, your society is not that great. Your society is not great until everyone is okay. And I know that sounds really idealistic and optimistic, but it's kind of like you haven't succeeded yet because you still haven't figured out how to make this work for everybody, or how to do it without physical and violent force. So it's the mindset that we could ever treat another human being like they don't matter or like they're less than. To me, that's the illness that's driving all the rest of the stuff. So if you walk into my store, hi, welcome. I won't say the name because people told me I shouldn't, but hi, welcome to the store. Do you have our credit card? And you're like, oh, no, thank you. I don't use credit cards. Oh, but did you know that you could save 15% by signing up today? Oh, that sounds great, but no, thank you. But ma'am, you seem to shop here a lot. I bet you could really use that 15%. Why don't you sign up today? No, I'm really okay. Then I can back off. After I've pestered you 3 different times, now I can back off. So the narcissism driving that is, you push this credit card no matter what. No matter how many different no's you've heard, find a different angle, because clearly they don't know what's good for them. Because if they knew what was good for them, they'd sign up for this credit card. So the narcissism comes in with the presumption that I know what's better for you than you do. You know what I mean? The fact that I don't hear your no, that your no is not good enough for me because I want you to have this credit card so I can charge you 30% interest. So I need you to sign up for this credit card. My need for you to sign up for this credit card is greater than your need.
Yeah.
You see
Yeah,
what
I get that. Yeah.
So it's so all encompassing.
If you don't do it, they don't. This is on a personal level. If you don't do it, then you don't love them. So they've got an answer to every angle.
Correct. Like, obviously you don't care. Like, I've seen associates, if I tell them no thank you, I don't want whatever credit card, I've seen their whole mood shift from one that's been very friendly and welcoming and hi, welcome, to like, obviously you're just mean and you just don't want to sign up for this credit card because you're just being mean. You see what I mean? So it's like a punishment for you standing up for what you believe is right for you. They will punish you for that. And I'm trying to, it scares me so much to see the direction our country is going here in America, because we're getting there to a punishment for people standing up and saying, this is not right. There's a punishing element to that. And narcissists oftentimes are in a position of power to punish. So it's like I want to make sure everyone recognizes what it is, so we don't continuously put leaders in power who are suffering from this disorder. And the silence from the victims is what keeps these people going. It's what gives them strength and the power to go on. And that's what I'm trying to annihilate. Annihilate is just them operating in the shadows, because they've been so successful at it for such a long time. But I do think people are waking up, and more people are discovering narcissism as more than, the selfies and just being self-absorbed, like talking about yourself all the time. That's tip of the iceberg. That might be a snowflake.
We're supposed to love ourselves, aren't we?
Yes.
How many go to the mirror and look in it and say, I love you? And I don't mean sarcastically. You've got to love yourself, but this is different, because this is all about, if only they realize that they're covering up a flaw that they don't want anybody else to see, because couldn't handle it by being broken.
Mm-hmm.
So the rest of it's to cover it all up, and all they do is treat everybody, whoever gets involved with them, as friends, girlfriends, really badly.
It seems like when the average understanding of narcissism is the person taking lots of selfies who says, oh, I'm so beautiful or so handsome, the person buying Axe cologne body spray. I don't know if you've got that in the UK, but, just this very self-obsessed person. But in reality, the narcissist literally hates themselves. They're not full of self-love, mentally or physically. They dislike themselves. And they find victims who are actually better people than they are, victims who have qualities they wish to possess. Then they obtain that victim, suck all the life out of them, copy all their qualities, add their qualities to their own personal bag of tricks, and add another mask to their game so they can go fool someone else. They actually feed on people. They're parasitic.
They really are. They're parasitic. And I read something very interesting. I think I like that all this conversation is happening around bullying in schools and things like that, because it's causing more and more former bullies to come out and kind of speak about their mindset regarding other people. And one thing I thought, this often targets people who don't hold the same beliefs about themselves that the narcissist holds about them. So in other words, oh, the pretty person got a bad grade, good, that's what they deserve. And the pretty person is sitting there going, wow, not only am I unattractive, but now I'm getting bad grades. So it's almost like the narcissist tells themselves a story about someone, their target, that may or may not even be true. It might not even be true. So oftentimes when we're interacting with these narcissists, they're interacting with an artificial version of us, a version of us that they've made up in their mind. So sometimes they'll do things and you're like, where is this coming from? It's coming from that artificial story they've told themselves about you. You're pretty, you're privileged, you're attractive, you have it all, you came from a great family, you have nothing to complain about, nothing. You didn't go through what I went through. Not even taking the time to actually learn your story, learn your struggle, learn those things that you struggle with, which might be very similar to them. So then, once they built up this fake story about you, they start interacting with you based on that fake story. And that's when the real insanity comes out, because you're like, I just don't understand where this is coming from. Coming from that artificial story they told you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a lot of playing games, isn't it? It's constantly playing a game with yourself.
I don't think they're aware they're playing games. That's the thing. Or maybe they are. That's the one part about narcissists I don't get. Do they know? I know we've touched on this before, but I still am confused. Do they know what they're doing? Do they go to bed at night when they're alone and their room is dark as they're staring up at the ceiling and think, I'm a jerk, I'm a horrible human being, I'm hurting people? Or are they thinking, I'm winning, I'm the king, I'm cool, everyone loves me? I don't know.
Here's what one narc told me. One narc told me that she cannot or prefers to not ever be alone. So she doesn't want to live alone. She doesn't like to be alone for very long because she does not want the thoughts that come. And I thought that that was pretty profound. And I think a lot of them are like that because I think they do know.
They don't want to deal with themselves.
Not at all. Because they'd have to think through, you know, as long as there's noise and distraction around, activity, people, places, busy, 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 as long as they're busy, 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 they never actually have to take the time to think through what they've done to people or the impact that they've had. Because when they do, it starts to eat whatever little bit of conscience is left, it starts to eat that alive. And rack them with the guilt that they stuff down throughout the day. They stuff down all that guilt. It starts to bubble up when they're by themselves.
It seems they need feeding, in my opinion. I think that they need the juice of their victims, like a spider sucking the blood out of a fly. They go through a period of time where they are fine because they fed enough on our energy. And then they need to start some trouble. So they find previous victims or new ones, start some trouble, and then suck all the juice out of the trouble. And the trouble could provide juice of a bunch of people yelling at them and calling them out, or people saying that they're the greatest thing ever. They seem to thrive off the energy and the juice, either positive or negative, equally the same.
And they also seem to want the attention on them.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's almost like, to me, I feel like this is how they prove to themselves that they are alive. So the rest of us kind of know that we're alive. I think for the most part, we're pretty aware of that. But I think the narcissist doesn't actually feel alive until they've caused a reaction of some sort. Because then that's proof. And a way that I could explain that is, if you were a ghost and you could see everything, you could see everyone, but they can't see you, you're going to knock stuff off the shelf. You're going to ring the doorbell, anything to prove to yourself that you're still real. Like, people don't seem to be able to see me, so let me cause a cold draft. And then if they shudder, I know that I still have an impact. I know I'm still real. I can still influence things. I can influence people as long as I still have an impact on them. But if I send a cold breeze or I ring the doorbell and none of them notice, now I really know that I'm a ghost. Now I really know that I'm not real. And now I'm really distressed because now what do I do? I have no impact. No one sees me. I have no influence. So, and nothing I'm doing is working. So maybe I just have to go on to the next realm or just be content being a ghost. But the truth is, they're not really ghosts. They're ghosts in their own mind. So they almost feel like if they don't do these things, no one will even know that they exist. And that's not true. It's like you don't have to do these things to people to prove your reality to yourself. You don't. You could just be a normal person. Whatever that means.
Yeah. So what do you reckon it is where some people aren't like that, even if we've all had these horrible childhoods?
Mm-hmm.
How come some people aren't like that then and some people are? Just obviously a chemical imbalance or something.
I think, I talk about this on my channel heavily. I think it's the presence or absence of what I call the empathy chip. And I feel like either it was never installed at birth or it's just never been activated. So I think those of us who go through these traumatic things and choose not to be terrible people at the end is because we still have that empathy chip in us. We still have that component in us that makes us a human being. I feel like we still have the ability to be rational and reasonable. So, you know, just because you got hurt one time or two times by XYZ, you might be a little gun shy, but you're not going to create an elaborate story about this particular group of people. You're more rational than that. You recognize sometimes things are isolated. You recognize that it wasn't just you, that unfair things happen to a lot of people. You're able to kind of rationalize and reason out in your mind and understand that all people are not bad, and that you don't have to manage people on the front end via narcissism to prevent yourself from getting hurt. You know, you can just be a healthy person with healthy boundaries. You can be a nice person with boundaries. And I think that's what differentiates us. I think narcissists feel like it's not possible to be both. You can't be kind with boundaries. You have to be nasty and controlling in order to maintain your boundaries, versus a kind person who just says you shall go no further than here. And that doesn't make you mean. It just makes you a person with boundaries. So I think it's the presence or absence of something, and I get really deep into it on my channel, but I think that it's just something that's either there or it's not. It's like they really live life blindly, and they really live life on autopilot to the point where they pretty much, a lot of them live the exact same day every single day, like Groundhog's Day. They just wake up and they the exact same day every single day, just on autopilot.
And they figure out how to be a human being by mirroring the qualities of other actual real human beings, it seems.
Correct. Like they are good at mimicking, but it always comes out in conversation and in actions. Very repetitive people who just don't seem to grasp what's going on around them. No clue.
But they can also, as we had said earlier, rise to high places within social media circles or within business, or, you know, be the leader of something, or a father or mother running a household. So
our society is currently, I believe that it is more dangerous to call them out, especially once you realize you have no help. So once you realize that the people in your immediate vicinity are either protectors of the narc or so grossly unaware that it would take you a day to explain to them what narcissism is, what the problem is, the impact. I think once you realize you have no help surrounding you, the best bet is just to get out and go no contact, because you won't be believed, and it will take a very long time for that narcissist's true colors to come out. They will come out.
They will?
Oh, absolutely. It can just take years, though. It can take years. The programs that they set up, you know, are so effective that it can take years for their true colors to come out. But the thing about a narc is, the more they get away with it, the more they do it, and the worse it gets. And they eventually reach a point where they get themselves caught. And I believe that's how a lot of these, the companies that go down for the different fraud and things like that, it's because they didn't stop while they were ahead, because they can't. Narcissists are also very greedy. So once they run a program and it worked, and they violated people and got away with it, they're going to keep doing it, because then it starts to develop a sense of invincibility. And in that pride that does precede a fall, they just keep going until they violate even laws that narcs have set up. Like, okay, now come on, you can't do this. Like, gee whiz, you know what I mean? You can't do this. So like they even reach a level that's not tolerable for even some of the worst narcs.
Does it run a bit like this as well? Like, I read this one book of this lady, I'm not going to, her name's Vendevelt, her second name, I can't remember her first name now, but she did life like a house. She said there's the basement, the first floor, the second floor, the third floor, then you get to the attic. So everybody in the basement, what's it like down there? Cold, dark, dingy. No one knows what's going on. Everybody's bumping into each other. No one can help each other. And it just goes on. And then you get to the first floor, the second floor. You haven't sorted everything out, but you've understood what the problems are, even if you're starting or you haven't sorted them out. And you get to the attic, and it's a bit like there's a cobweb, and it says, I mean, you've got to be obviously quite spiritual, I think, and quite at ease with yourself to get that far. But it's a bit like you'll go, well, it's all right, I don't even need to clear that cobweb up, because life will sort that out for me. Because you're unconditional now, and life's different. Do you think that a lot of these people, it's obviously they're living in the cold, dark, dingy dungeon. There's no light, no help, no one knows what they're doing, where they're going. Is that also what's going on then?
You mean the narcissists or the people who are affected by them?
Well, I think the ones that get affected by them personally feel like that. But I was talking about the narcissist people.
You know, I give that a lot of thought, you know, because well, actually, so I believe the answer to your question is, I believe they are in that basement, but it's a basement of their choosing. And I'll tell you why I believe that. There's one narc I know. There's absolutely nothing I can do to bring this person up to a higher level. And I feel a certain sense of obligation to do so, even though I shouldn't feel that. I do, because of who this person is. But what I mean is books. I've given books, articles, different movies that I'm like, ooh, if they see this, then it'll trigger this thought, and then they'll connect the dots, and then we can, you know, pull them out of this, you know. Nothing. Literally nothing has any impact there. And what kills me the most, though, is the books, the not wanting to read. And I get that we live in a society that doesn't really read anymore, or doesn't enjoy it like they used to, you know. But even in a digitized form, the answer is no. Sending YouTube videos, so I've given up now. I no longer carry that particular obligation, but it's sad because oftentimes this person will call and they're still running in the same mental loop. And I'm just sitting there thinking, I have tried so hard to get you out of this loop. I have tried to save you from yourself, to pull you out of the basement. I've literally tried everything that I know, because the truth of the matter is, like, you know, I think we're all in the basement to some extent until we start to get exposed to things. I feel like books have saved my life. Reading, just opening my mind up, just keeping those juices flowing have really kept me out of the basement. Because otherwise, if you never infuse your mind with new thoughts, you're going to keep running the same thought loops. And the thing about narcissists is they seem to be able to block out any new information that doesn't align with how they want to be, which is stuck. So it doesn't matter. You could send them the world's greatest teacher and they would have zero impact on them. So I think they live in the basement, but they want to be there, because you go and you say, hey, the door is open, come up to, you know, ground level with me. They won't do it. There's something about them that wants to be there, that holds them there. And it makes it really hard to feel sorry for them, especially when help has been extended. You know what I mean? Because at some point it seems like you're choosing this pathway versus it just happening to you. So like the fence walkers, those people who grew up really sheltered, never really had anything else to bounce their ideas off of, they finally get exposed. There are some that are like, oh, well, this is how I am and I'm not changing. And they cement themselves, those minds go reprobate, and that's who they are for the rest of their lives. Others will get exposed and really start to consider their actions maybe for the first time. And it's almost like their humanity gets flipped on, like their humanity switch gets hit for the first time. And they may not be perfect at it, but they take the time to really consider all of their actions, their choices, and they try to become better people. They might fall, excuse me, because of how, you know, it's very hard to break habits. And that's why they call them habits. So it's really hard to break out of doing something a certain way. But the type of person that you'd want to be around is the person who will at least pause and go, I really don't.
Is this something they've turned into? Is this something that's going on in their body then?
I think it cements. So what I think is, and again, this is just my personal opinion, I think that the mind, if it's not kept pliable, it cements. And it cements at an early age. It cements at like somewhere between the ages of 18 and 25 is when I know they say the personality is formed by 3, but I think it keeps going and it finally settles and cements somewhere in those 20s. And so to answer your question, yes, I do think it's something they become. And I think that fermentation gets worse over time. I think that the more it goes unchecked, the more it goes unchallenged, the more people that give up on them. And it's not saying that you shouldn't give up, because if you keep going, eventually you're going to drain yourself.
What do you think it's like for a narcissist when they get rejected?
Oh man. I think that's
hellfire will come down on you. I think
that Prince Williams drop explodes. Now you touch their tail. Oh man, when a narcissist gets rejected, it's so not pretty.
Or broken up with. If you break up with one, if you end it and get out first, watch out.
Because they didn't authorize that. So if anyone's going to do the dismissing, it's them. So the fact that you felt high enough to dismiss them, it triggers them in ways, because it's such an insult to them and their fragile ego. And once again, the narcissist decides when they're done with you. So it's very rare when you decide you're done and they're like, okay, and then they just go away. That's when you usually see them do the love bombing.
But they can't leave you alone.
No, they can't. Not until they've decided they're through with you. So to them, and this stems from their entitlement, to them, you belong to them. Even if you're not married, whatever, if you're just a friend, you're their friend. You belong to them. They get to decide the terms of the relationship, and they decide when the relationship is over, not you. And that's what makes it so hard to get away from them. And that's why they flip-flop in between a really nice person and a really nasty narcissist, because and this goes back to me saying that they know they can't be that nasty narcissist all the time, because I think they figured it out enough to know that doesn't work for most people. That is not going to get me very far. So they flip-flop between this very kind person who pulls you back in, and then right when they have you where they want you, they go back to who they really are, because they can't keep up the act.
Yes, they reel you out, they reel you in, they reel you out, they reel you in.
Absolutely.
Treat people as you wish to be treated.
Right. So we just allow this to go on, and it's just reaching a breaking point now where it has to stop. Something hurt people. That is what I've heard, and it seems to be very true. We've all been hurt, but then there's a limit. A lot of us have been hurt where we don't hurt other people, but then there's people who've been deeply hurt, and those are the ones that hurt others. And I think something else, absolutely. And I think something else we can do or start practicing as part of our walk in all this is being as consistent as the narcissist is. So it's like, one of their things that they try to do is wear down your resistance to them. And my goal is to help you build that resistance up, because they want you to go, oh my God, forget it. Just forget it. They want you to throw your hands up and just say, you win, you got it. Yeah, you're right. You're right. They want you to get frustrated. And one of the things that I intend is to teach people how to hold firm, because the narcissist holds firm with ease. It's easy for them. It's not easy for us because we have that internal system that gets exhausted. So my goal is to double down and just say no for those narcs that you can't get away from, to not throw your hands up in frustration, to say, okay, well, if we're done talking about this for right now, we can pick up tomorrow, and then literally pick up tomorrow in the exact same place. For them to realize that you're not going to wear me down with your insanity. I recognize your insanity and I can't get away from it, so we'll just deal with the rest of it tomorrow. And
you're saying all this, but what do people do when, like you're in that position, but they don't leave you alone?
Oh, well,
They may not be doing it directly, they're doing it indirectly, but they're doing things in public. How do you get around that when they won't stop?
well, that's tough. That is tough because, the first option always, if possible, is to get away from them and go no contact. I do recognize that that's not always an option for everybody. I think a person almost has to develop like a smart alecky, smart ass type attitude with them, which basically says, I don't care if you're going to sit here and act out in public. I'll act out with you. We'll just act out together. It's like a resoluteness that no matter what you do to me, I am not backing down. I'm not. Now, here's the danger in that. A lot of narcs, it's hard to gauge where a narcissist is on the scale, because a lot of them, when their simple tactics don't work, they will ramp it up. And sometimes that translates into domestic violence of different forms. Like, well, if she won't shut up, I'll make her shut up. Or if he won't shut up, I'll make him shut up. I'll throw something at him. I'll, hit her in the mouth, whatever. Because their goal is to win at all costs. And it's not that your goal is to win, your goal is to not lose. And I don't know if that's as clear as I want it to be. Your goal is not to win, your goal is to not lose. So again, they gain their power and they're able to keep going because we do back down, because we will back off the fight, because we won't press the issue, because we will just go ahead and concede, because concession is easier than to keep going around and around in circles with someone who's sort of kind of inexhaustible. They kind of have a long fuse. It's really hard to wear out a narcissist because I do think they're missing that vital internal.
They use everything, like we just said. If you're quiet, that's enough to make them argue. And if you make a noise or argue with them, then they love that. They can argue with you.
It's like, give me something to fight with. But my hope would be that after going a couple rounds and after realizing that you're dealing with a person who will stop at nothing to silence you, stop at nothing to break you down, stop at nothing to get you to let them have their way with you and your property or whatever without you saying anything. My hope would be that something internal would kick on and say, you know what? I'm worth more than this. I am worth more than someone who doesn't want me to speak. I'm worth more than someone who spends time trying to tear down my self-esteem, like will actually take the time out of their day to try to bring down my self-esteem. I'm worth more than this. I'm worth more than a person who will offer me kindness one day and complete coldness the next day. I'm worth more than that. I'm worth more than a person who wants to use me in a variety of different ways. I'm worth more than that. To hell with their trauma, their childhood trauma. We all have childhood trauma of some kind. So it's my hope is that once you start to realize how determined they are to take you down, it would kick up something inside to go, you know what? I'm worth more than this. I can do better than this. I don't deserve this. And they're not correct. Because I think there's a part of us sometimes that might think the narcissist is correct about us. And I'm here to tell you that they're not. They're completely incorrect. The only thing that they're correct about is how beautiful and confident and smart you actually are, which is why they want to tear you down. That's the only thing they're.
Yes, that is so well said. You were selected by the narcissist because you're an excellent human being, a good human being. They don't have your qualities, so they had to get you in order to mimic you. It's like what they say about the archons, if you believe in that sort of thing, or like David Icke, what he talks about. And I'm not sure if I'm totally into all that. It is an interesting concept that they themselves cannot create. They can only replicate. That's a narcissist.
Only replicate. Yes, I'm very familiar with that and that concept. They can only replicate. They cannot create on their own, which is why their lives are often just a replication of the day. Because narcissists will often do it once, and if it's been done once and it worked out okay, that's good enough for them. And they'll never change up from that one time that it worked. So yes, all they can do is replicate. They cannot create. And they see the excellence in you, and that is the only thing that they're correct about, is that internal excellence. and they work overtime to try to convince you opposite.
Yeah,
of
and then they want to cut it down.
They want to cut it, yeah, like a tall tree. It's like, that tree is just a little bit too tall. I'm going to cut it down and bring it down in size and show it that I'm the big woman or I'm the big man, not you. Even though that by virtue of them wanting to cut the tree down is stating that you are bigger than them. And I don't mean that in a superiority type of way. I just mean that in their desire to cut that tree down means that that tree must be really tall, if that makes any sense. And that's where I want people to pull their confidence from. It's like, this person is after you because you are displaying the characteristics of a tall tree. And for whatever reason, they either can't grow their tree or their tree is grown and they're just greedy. Who cares what the reason is, though? All we really need to know is that they want to chop your tree down. And we're going to prevent that from happening.
Yeah,
and
they're going to win.
Exactly. They want to win. Like, I won't even play board games with people who are psychotically competitive on a board game. Like, if you're crazy psycho nuts over Monopoly, I won't do. I'll just say, does anyone want my turn? Someone else can have my turn, because it's just not, it's not healthy to be that competitive. A healthy competition, sure. Fun competition, absolutely. Friendly competition between friends, great. But I have to win this Monopoly game to prove to myself that I'm better than you. Something is wrong with that.
They hate you because they ain't you, really. That it comes down to that. They want to destroy you because they don't have what you have. It's so weird.
Absolutely. Like, it's sick. It's sick. And I hate that I didn't have anyone coaching me to say, you need to get away from those girls. They're not your friends. They don't like you. They're trying to destroy everything that you have, and any way that they can figure out how to do it. You know what I mean? You're not safe around these people.
Can I just ask, is our Patricia there? I don't know if she's, she's had some internet problems.
I'm here. I'm here.
Do you want to say anything? You've been very quiet.
Not really, but just want to thank everybody for coming and permission to exist. It's been absolutely wonderful listening to you. I just, there's so much that we all need to learn, and, to put these people in their place, so to speak. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's totally the goal. And I just do want to make very clear here at the end that it does affect men and women. I know we talked about men a lot earlier, but I definitely want to make clear that this is something that affects men and women.
We say goodbye publicly, but we say goodbye off air. So if we just say goodbye to everybody in the chat room, and thank you everybody for listening in the chat room, and then we'll just say goodbye off air. So to everybody, chat room, it is goodbye, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, good morning to you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bling Bling. Thank you, Roxanne. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Patricia Steer. And thank you, Permission to Exist.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. And everyone in the chat, remember, these are our personal opinions, all right? And we are allowed to have them. So if you were offended by anything that we said, please don't take it personally.
Yeah.
This is based off of our own experiences and our own lives. And if you've had a different experience in your own life, then that's your experience. But this is what we have lived through.
And to any of our stalkers out there who happen to be narcissists, hi.
You finished that.
Well said. I'll drink to that.
So exciting. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Mwah.
Goodbye. Big hugs.
Big hugs.